Good evening, everybody. I hope you're having a good Tuesday night. It's been a while since I've come on here and done a soul stream by myself. And yet, here I am after a few weeks. I finally found the time when I felt was the right time to come on here by myself, talk a little sports right here. And here, this case, going to talk some NBA basketball. I'm going to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers. Going to officially recap their season now that it's over. Because I did do a season recap, but now that's officially over, it's been a week. Let's talk about it. And now you've been following my channel, you know, in the week since I've been dropping some short videos here talking about it. But now let's get into it. Let's have a nice discussion about it. All right, let's do this. All right, so the 76ers, man, I mean, we went into the season expecting another second round elimination. And in that regard, this team did not disappoint at all. They went into the season, made it through the regular season, made it to the playoffs. They had a win in the opening series to build a false sense of hope, and then went out in the second round against the top team in the Boston Celtics. That's exactly what happened. But yeah, but this one was really the most frustrating. Especially it's the most frustrating because we had our opportunity to beat this team. We had two opportunities, Game 6, Game 7, to beat this team and move on to the Eastern Conference Finals and play the Miami Heat, but we did not do that. It's crazy now. The Celtics, who we lost out on, are getting whooped by the Heat. They're down 3-0 and don't look. And I don't know the chances that they're going to come back from a 3-0 deficit, win that series. I'm not liking those chances myself. Yeah, so I don't like those chances right there. I feel like ultimately, like, look, this team. I mean, yeah, obviously the season went as expected. I mean, look at the Sixers did. You expected Embiid to carry the load. And yeah, that's what happened there. He carried the load. He had an awesome regular season again. But this time around, he won the regular season MVP. They finally gave him that award. Instead of Jokic getting voted the MVP, this time around Embiid finally got it. But it was not unexpected that Joel Embiid went out there, had an awesome regular season where he was just lights out. He was doing good shooting. He was solid on defense. I mean, he wasn't the best defender in the NBA, but man, he was still putting in a pretty solid job there, shutting some guys down. You know, he did have a look, you know, get some nice steals here and there. He was getting some blocks though, too. He was doing a pretty good job getting those blocks. That was definitely a strong suit from the season from him. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just all around, it was a pretty good season for Embiid. Offensively, what else can you say? He was scoring. He could shoot some threes at times. You know, he wasn't afraid to get to the line. He was making moves. He was scoring up to at least 30 a night most of the time he was playing. And you also, right, like, you know, he had solid defense. I mean, yeah, Embiid certainly earned his MVP stripe for the regular season because regular season time, when he was on in the game, he was on and he was helping that team out. But then again, you look at the team around him. You had James Harden, who played good during the regular season. He led the league in assists throughout the season. However, when it comes time, playoff time, what did James Harden do? He did what he always did, and that's choke. You had Tyrese he was in there. All right, he was solid, but I'm just waiting for him to take that next step. Like, he just hasn't taken that next step in improving his efficiency shooting. The solid player, but he's not read all-star peak yet. And now, to be fair, this was his second year as a starter, his third year in the league. Okay, so yeah, I still going to give Tyrese Maxey another year or two. Plus, he's still in his early 20s, so there's still time for him to grow and develop as a player, that is. And but also mature as a person. But yeah, Tyrese Maxey had a respectable outing where you feel, yeah, it gives you a sense of hope that he's going to get better in the future. And yet Tobias Harris, he was that hot and cold player throughout the season who just he should be an all-star on paper, but he just couldn't stay hot consistently. And the rest of the team, you like look around, you have PJ Tucker, went one move, corner three, but that didn't work out too well for him because eventually teams pick up on that. When they see PJ Tucker in that corner alone and he gets a pass from someone, they immediately get ready to guard that corner three because they know that's the one thing he's good at. So he didn't always get the right looks for that corner three to truly make a difference. And then the rest of the roster, you got Dwayne Dedman. Why was he even there on this roster? Why? What did he do? And also, you got the rest, of course, Shake Milton hasn't done anything to impress me. He's easily replaceable. George Niang, I don't see anything from him. Korkmaz, forget about it. Although outside of the main starters, you had Paul Reed. Paul Reed actually got some playing time this season. Now, I thought it took long enough, but he finally got some playing time, and he showed he could at least be decent backup center with more experience. And really, I don't know where the Sixers are going to find a decent backup center this offseason, so you might as well try to renegotiate with Paul Reed to keep him around. But it would have been nice if he got some playing time earlier. Maybe he could have been even a better backup center if he got more experience out of it. But yeah, that was solid right there. You also got Daniel House Jr., when he was playing, was doing pretty solid. He was a respectable piece. But as the season went along and we got into the playoffs, he wasn't getting as much playing time. It didn't do that spectacular, so we didn't have enough time to make a difference. And right, but then come play it. So the season, we get through, we get the number 3 seed. Whoop-de-doo. We've been there, done that before. Playoff time, build up a false sense of hope. You sweep the Nets in the opening round. A Nets team rebuilding that the only reason they were in that position is because of the strong start they had to the season with KD and Kyrie before they both forced their way out of there at the trade deadline. Because let's face it, that's the reason they were in that position they were in the first place, to make the playoffs, because of that strong start. But then when they lost those guys, what do they really have? So yeah, whoop-de-doo. You sweep against the cakewalk team in the opening round. Like, we haven't done that before. We did that against the Wizards, Doc Rivers' first year there. And then this year, we get to the second round. Now, I expected this team to get eliminated in the second round. I was expecting the Sixers to lose in the second round going into the season. If you followed my channel, you saw my short videos, my live streams, you see me comment on other Sixers content creators' videos. I predicted it was going to be an elimination in the second round. However, this was the most frustrating of them, of the Doc Rivers era, a step ahead of the first time with the Hawks. And it's the most frustrating because we had our opportunities to win this series. They were right there. We all saw it. They won game 1. Awesome performance by James Harden there. Then eventually, after we dropped 2 straight, but then we rebounded. Harden has a good game 4. Or was it game 4 or 5? A good game 4. We win game 5. We're up 3-2. We have game 6 at Boston and then game 7 at home. Okay, we have a chance to win this series. We have a chance to at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And what do? We fall apart late in the game against the Celtics, game 6. We're playing competitive, but then they outscore us. Tatum comes on late. We start getting cold, and we end up dropping that, and we go to game 7. First half, we keep up, make it competitive, but then the second half comes, and the team forgets how to play. Completely forgot how to play. At one point, the Celtics went on a 28-3 run. Yeah, 28-3. Great. We gave Atlanta sports fans something to laugh at when we don't even have a beef with them. Wonderful. But yeah, seriously. 28-3 run in a game 7. Embiid all of a sudden, the same guy who was the regular season MVP, who finally earned that award, who had a spectacular regular season, who I campaigned for to win the MVP, that guy, he completely forgets how to play the game of basketball. He goes from being Joel Embiid to start playing like Kwame Brown in game 7. And he's getting smoked, figuratively, by 37-year-old Al Horford. You're right, you remember Al Horford, who was on the Sixers roster, had an awful contract, was terrible. Sixers fans hated him. People were making jokes about him. He was the butt of Philly sports fans' jokes during his tenure here. Yes, that Al Horford found a little bit of life in his twilight years being back at Boston. He was getting the better of Joel Embiid. James Harden, Mr. who had a great game, games 1 and games 4, but in the other 5 games, made at most 4 field goals, as Stephen A. Smith pointed out in his rant, which I'll get to that in a second. But yes, James Harden, the guy who was known to choke come playoff time. What did he do? He did it again. He did it again. Of course. But we expect that from James Harden. And that's one of the reasons I don't want him back next year. And I'll explain why when I get to the future part of it. But holy smokes, this is just absolutely embarrassing. Especially being that we were up 3 games to 2. And against a Celtics team who's weaker than they were last year. Don't believe me, they're weaker. Look at how they're doing this series in the Eastern Conference Finals against Miami Heat. They might get swept. Or maybe at best win 1 game. To the number 8 seed Miami Heat. So if that's not a sign the Celtics team's weaker, I don't know what is. But the point is, we had an opportunity to finally get past Boston. Not just a team that's been better than us in recent years, but historically has been our kryptonite in the playoffs throughout different eras. For decades, we finally had a chance to get past them and really get one over on Boston for the first time in years. And we fell flat. And it's worse because there was actually hope in this series. Okay, I mean, 2020, yeah, there weren't high expectations going into that series. Yeah, that was embarrassing in the bubble to get swept by Boston. But it wasn't really, we didn't really have hope. So it wasn't kind of on the embarrassing scale, low. Or 2018 when we played Boston and lost them the first time we'd made the playoffs with Embiid. We didn't have expectations going into that series. We kind of knew that Boston was the better team that year. We were just happy we made it that far that year. But here in 2023, you're talking, there's actually hope and there's a chance, and they don't do it. And you know what? The Sixers now. So yeah, another typical season by the Sixers. Typical Doc Rivers style choke job. Where on paper, they should be better than they actually are. They should maybe have a chance to contend, and they don't even get to their full potential. Typical 76ers. And that summarizes the Doc Rivers era of the 76ers. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Doc Rivers and why he was justly fired last week. Because in 3 seasons here, all he did was get us the second round 3 times. First year there, we were the number 1 seed. We were playing against the Hawks team that on paper we were better than, that we should have beat, but we didn't. Now, we didn't do it. We blew 2 20-plus point leads in that series. And if we didn't blow either of those 2 leads, guess what? We would have won that series in 6 games. There would have been no game 7. Now, granted, we would have lost to the Bucks, and the Bucks still would have gone on to beat the Suns in that year's finals. But still, we would have at least had an opportunity there to at least make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. We didn't do it. Doc Rivers, of course, didn't have the right pieces there, didn't adjust when the Hawks would adjust to his game plans. In the 2 games we were up, he didn't adjust when he saw the leads coming closer. We flopped right there. We finally got rid of Ben Simmons. We had to get rid of Seth Curry, who was one of our better bench shooters in that first year he was there. So we lost that piece. We lost Andre Drummond, who was a solid backup center in the earlier stages of that 2021-2022 season. We did get James Harden in return for it, and Paul Millsap. Yeah, because Paul Millsap in the early 2020s really screams an asset, right? I mean, quite frankly, he never really was. Quite frankly, he was just an all-star at best at his peak. But yeah, all we got at best was James Harden in return. A lot of Sixers fans were excited because we got rid of Ben Simmons. But guess what? that year we knew ultimately the Heat were the better team. We knew they were going to beat us, and they did. 0 for 2. Now you get to the final year of Doc Rivers' run. We have the same expectations, but hey, there's actually a chance right here. You're up 3-2 against the Boston Celtics. You can at least beat them, and they didn't do it. Doc Rivers in another situation with 3 wins on the 3 wins. Couldn't get it done. And while we're still on the subject of Doc Rivers and why firing him after that is justified, let's go through the history of this. This goes long before Doc Rivers was even touched the Philadelphia 76ers front office. Long before he stepped foot in their facility. You know what? Right, remember the Orlando Magic? Remember the series against the Detroit Pistons? It was the year before the Pistons won, but it was the opening round, 2003 playoffs. They were up. All they had to do in that opening round was close out the series. And they couldn't do it. They lost 3 straight games, eliminated. Remember, the Boston Celtics, fresh off that one championship win, going against the LeBron-led Cavs. Now, on paper, they should have won that series in 2009 in the second round, right? But they didn't. They lost. And then let's skip ahead. The Clippers. Remember, there was several 3-1 leads they had. They blew. There was one, I think, was it 2015? They were up 3-1, and they lost in the second round. I can't remember who was against. Yeah, but they had a 3-1 blown lead during the Blake CP3 era with Rivers as their coach. Then the 2020 bubble against the Nuggets, they had a 3-1 lead, Kawhi, Paul George, and they blew that. And then he was fired. And a 3-2 lead. It's not 3-1, but it's still up Doc Rivers' alley. So why would we bring this guy back when there's a history of choking? He is the biggest underachieving coach in NBA history. He didn't do anything to up us from Brett Brown. Come on. Brett Brown got eliminated in the second round twice. We could have been in the same position with him. So what was really the point? I mean, dude, we had to fire him. We had to. And not to mention, look at his tenure with the 76ers, particularly with developing young talent, because he did such a great job there, right? It took way too long for him to finally play Paul Reed. He tried relying on guys like Dwayne Dedmon to get playing time. He only played Tyresemaxey because he had no choice. When Ben Simmons was being the biggest baby on the planet, trying to act like he's been forced to fight in the military against his will, when all he's being asked to do is play a game of basketball, which he has potential to be decent at, and he couldn't be bothered to do that, then Doc Rivers was forced to play Tyresemaxey. So we lucked our way into a good one there. But remember, Paul Reed took forever to play. Remember Isaiah Joe doing pretty solid in the G League? Looked like he had a chance of maybe being a solid bench piece for the Sixers. But Doc Rivers is the coach. Nope, Isaiah Joe can't play for the Sixers. And what happens with him? Oh, he goes off to the Thunder. And he's actually been a pretty solid player. He's a solid role player for the Thunder. Maybe he could be a decent piece for them in their rebuild. Because the Oklahoma City Thunder are a team that's headed in the right direction. They did make the play-in tournament. Granted, they didn't make it to the playoffs itself, but hey, considering how much of a deep rebuild they were in, that's progress for them. Isaiah Joe could have at least been a decent bench guy. I mean, look what he did with the Thunder. He would have certainly been better than Korkmaz. Would have been better than George Niang. Would have been better than Dwayne Dedmon. Now, I know that's a weird comparison, Dedmon, Joe, different positions, but still, just when you look at our bench guys, regardless of what position they play, what their role would be, what their role is, Isaiah Joe would have been better than some of those guys, that's for sure. And Paul Reed, when he finally got some playing time, he showed he can be a decent backup center. Now, if he would have gotten playing time earlier by now, he could have been a reliable backup center. But yeah, that's Doc Rivers for you right there. And Jaden Springer, I mean, he's only gotten very little playing time. We don't know if he could be decent or not. And maybe with Doc Rivers being gone now, maybe Mac McClung, G League, Remember Delaware Bluecoats, the reigning defending G League champions? Remember the slam dunk contest? Highlight reel there? Maybe he gets an opportunity now with Doc Rivers being gone to at least be a bench guy. Now, I don't know how it's going to pan out, but at this point with the Sixers' lack of depth on their bench, he's at least a guy they should give an opportunity to. But Doc Rivers there, if he was still there, we wouldn't be able to realistically talk about Mac McClung getting an opportunity. Only reason I'm bringing it up now is because he's gone. And yeah, but Doc Rivers, the point I'm getting at is those guys like Isaiah Joe, took him way too long to play Paul Reed. Jaden Springer, not knowing if he could be a decent bench piece or not because he barely got playing time, is part of Doc Rivers. It's a horrible job with that. But what does he do? What do we get instead that suits Doc Rivers? Bunch of veterans like PJ Tucker, 37 years old, corner three, one move, and we're still stuck with his contract. But as far as the trade goes, what is there to get in return? What is there to get? Honestly. Yeah, you can tell I'm squinting my eyes. I'm having a hard time trying to figure that one out at the moment. Because his value is low. That's why I have a hard time figuring out. PJ Tucker's got low trade value after this season he had. It's a shame we didn't just have him on a one-year deal. We could have gotten rid of him this year. No hit, no harm, no foul. But got to find a team that's willing to take on that contract for 2 seasons. It's a terrible move right there. Sadly, we might be stuck with him. Unless we can find a good package, and good luck with that. But yeah, who else did we get to Doc Rivers? Montrezl Harrell, because he's a veteran, and Doc Rivers likes those guys. I thought he'd be a decent backup center. I thought he would, but he really wasn't. He's replaceable too. But these are the guys we relied on with Doc Rivers. Dwight Howard is a backup center for 1 year because Doc Rivers likes veterans. But he was gone after that. Back to the Lakers. So what was the point? Then what? Just to go find Andre Drummond? Traded in the Simmons-Harden trade? Paul Millsap? Nothing. Like, it's just yep, that's right there with Doc Rivers. We had to bring on too many veterans just so Doc Rivers could actually play him. But now that he's gone, that raises the next question. Who should be the Sixers' next head coach? Now, before we actually get into naming candidates, one of the things we have to consider for this is when you're looking for a new coach, you need a coach that's actually going to work with some of these younger players. If the Sixers decide, hey, let's try to give Springer or Mac McClung opportunities to at least play as bench players, give them some NBA minutes, especially early in the season, especially if we're playing against some cakewalk teams. Let them get in there in some of those easier games as bench guys, give them an opportunity to play. And the reason I'm saying against some of the easier teams is because they're more likely to succeed in that role for the time they play, which is likely to boost their confidence as to be like, hey, I can do this at the NBA. Hey, I'm ready for this. So that's why I'd suggest bringing in, like, for next year, having guys like McClung or Jaden Springer play backup minutes against some teams like the Hornets, teams like the Pacers, Pistons, those teams. Hopefully it'll help get their confidence up in that situation. That's one way you could do it right there. Let them play, see what you got. Because they got to be better than some of the pieces we got currently. So you got to find a coach that's at least willing to let these guys play. That's not just going to sit there and bench them if they commit one foul. Oh, Mac McClung committed a foul. Let me bench him, and he's not going to play until, I don't know, a month from now. Like Doc Rivers did with Paul Reed. You definitely need a coach that's willing to work with these guys. And you definitely need someone that isn't coasting off a championship from the past, from decades past. That's what, we do have, there's some candidates we could promote from within. Let's start with that. You got possibly Dan Burke, assistant coach. Another assistant coach you could promote, Sam Cassell. Now, Sam Cassell's a guy that's been favored among Sixers fans for the past year now, going back to last summer. A lot of Sixers fans have been pushing that, hey, let's promote Sam Cassell. Let's make him our new head coach. That's been a favorable argument there, and I'm not against it at all. I mean, I'm really willing to at least provide him an opportunity to at least see what he can do. I mean, he looks like he's worked good with the players. At least see what he can do as a head coach. Not him, maybe Dan Burke, maybe two guys that at least give opportunities to. It's got to be better than right, or maybe Monty Williams, which I don't know though. But the way he flamed out with the Suns the last 2 years, it just feels like it would be the West Coast version of Doc Rivers at this point to me. So I don't really know if I'm too high on that idea right there. But maybe, I mean, Nick Nurse, you know what it is really, honestly? We really need, before with this whole head coaching thing, we need better bench pieces. We do. That's why I was emphasizing earlier, maybe trying to bring some of these G League guys up. Maybe try to actually invest in the draft a little bit. Maybe try to trade up a few spots in the draft, maybe. But then again, if we can find a decent alt package for a trade to trade up, then I would go for it. But we got to get some better players, though, first. We got to do that. We need better players before we can really talk about bringing in a coach, because you could promote Cassell or Burke or hire to say, Nick Nurse or Monty Williams. You could do that. But if you don't improve the roster, what difference is it going to make? So I'm advocating for fix up this roster. Some of these players that can go. Let's start with that. Since I'm talking about how to fix up the roster, so that way to actually give the new coach a better chance of succeeding. What you can do. Korkmaz. He hasn't brought any value to this team. He's a liability. He can go. Shake Milton. He's been here for several years. He hasn't done anything really to impress me. Milton can go. And of course, PJ Tucker, that's an awful contract. It's the Al Horford contract all over again. It is. It's the same type of contract to a big man on the downswing of his career. But in this case, it's even worse because you gave it to a big man who was at best a role player at his peak. At least with Al Horford, he was an all-star a few times. He at least had more respectability as a player than PJ Tucker throughout his career. So I think this is worse. This Al Horford one. But you got to get out of that contract somehow. Somehow find something to get in return. I don't care. Find something. Bring back Danny Green. No, maybe try to see. Maybe there's a decent player from the Spurs we could get, because a lot of the players from the Spurs that play respectable end up leaving that team anyway. It's just been the way it's been with Pop in his later years over there at the Spurs. Players that show promise ultimately end up leaving. Maybe we get a guy from the Spurs. Maybe. But then again, I'm going to have to look at the list of NBA free agents to see what we can get. Hold up one second. Okay, you know what I'm going to do right here? All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to share the screen with you guys. You guys can see the list of free agents for yourself. And I'll go through them right there. And we can take a look at some names that maybe stand out. Or maybe worthy bringing in. All right, let's take a look. Got Russell Westbrook. I don't know, man. Yeah, he was doing decent for the Clippers at times, but I don't know. Now, if Russell Westbrook's willing to accept the role as a role player, maybe. Harden, I think while I'm still on the subject of Harden, he can go, and here's why. Yes, while he played solid during the regular season, ultimately, when it mattered most, come playoff time, he vanished, as he always does. It's not worth keeping him for that, because Harden's going to be a guy that if you have him on the team, he's going to want to play a key role in the offense. If you got a guy like Harden on your team who's always vanishing figuratively come playoff time, he's not reliable in this situation. He's not reliable in that situation as one of those main guys right there. He's not. So yeah, he can go. So yeah, he can go for that reason right there. And there was this thing though that he said that if he gets traded, he'll get like they'll have to take on 200 million his contract, but if he stays, he'll want 1 million or higher. I'm not paying him higher at this point in his career for going to 34. And going on 34 is a player we know can't get it done in the playoffs because he's going to want to play an integral role in the offense. He's not going to reduce his role and be a role player. He's not. So it's not going to work out favorable for us. Yeah, Kyrie, no. I mean, D'Angelo Russell, I would like to have a guy like a D'Angelo Russell, but the Lakers will re-sign him. Kevin Love, not at this point in his career. Looking around. I mean, Harrison Barnes, I think he'd be better than some of these. Oh, here's a good Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant, I'd rather have him than PJ Tucker or Dwayne Dedman or Montrezl Harrell. I'd rather the Sixers try to go for Jeremy Grant. I think he'd be an upgrade for them on the bench. If he could come in there, I would like that. Now, Derrick Rose, I'm not interested in D Rose because at this point in his career, what's he really going to bring at this point? I'm sorry, but it's not going to work. I'm trying to say, Will Barton. I mean, some of these names seem like solid names on paper. I mean, Seth Curry, hey, if he comes back, I would like to have Seth Curry back. I would like to. Be a decent piece, but I'm not sure if it's gonna. I mean, Kobe White. I mean, some of these players seem like decent options on paper that seem like they could be better than some of the guys we currently have on our roster. So I'd like to see if we can get some of these guys right here. There are some guys I would like to consider. That could be a bit of an upgrade. I mean, Andre Drummond back, maybe. I mean, shit, maybe one. I mean, yeah, there's some pieces there that kind of like right here as maybe potential backup option. I mean, Taj Gibson, TJ Warren, if he could stay healthy, he'd be a decent backup player, small forward. I mean, but I don't think he's gonna. Realistically, I don't see him coming to us. I mean, let's look at the list right here. There's a lot of names to soak in, but man, I just named a few right there I could think off the top of my head. I would like for the Sixers to maybe try to sign this offseason. They'd have to be better than some of the players I just named here. And speaking of that, another player who's got to go is Tobias Harris. He's not the worst player on the team, but here's why. The Sixers are locked in with a bad contract for a guy who plays up to role player standards, but is getting paid star power for, can say small forward, money. So I don't want to keep him there if he's getting paid starter small forward money, but he's playing like a role player at best. I don't want that contract there. It's taking up too much cap space. So I would like to get rid of Tobias. That could give us some more room. Maybe throw some money some of these solid role players' way that I was just looking at. But yeah, I think that's the first thing the Sixers got to do. You got to retool this roster, get rid of some of these bad contracts like Tucker and Harris. Let some of these bench pieces walk. Maybe bring up some G League guys. Try McLung and Springer, bring them in as bench guys, see what they can do as bench guys. Maybe try to trade up in the draft if you can do so. Maybe try to get some of those pieces right there. See if you can get a guy like maybe a Seth Curry back. Maybe try to see if you can afford TJ Warren. Maybe Jeremy Grant from the Trailblazers. See if you can make a deal to get him in. He'd be an upgrade on the bench. I mean, there's certainly some guys you could maybe try to go for, I think. That would be decent pieces. I mean, I would not want Dylan Brooks because of the whole drama over there. But yeah, there are some pieces we could maybe try to go after. But yeah, that's what we got to do first. Then from there, then try to build up the roster from there. Maybe try to promote from within, or maybe try to bring up a Nick Nurse. Because Nick Nurse, when he has the right roster, could win a championship. So that's what I would lean to as a coach. I'm narrowing it down to either promote within, Cassell, Burke, or Nick Nurse. You guys come in, even if you're catching this on the replay, whether you catch this live, you can leave a comment in the chat. Let me know who you think the Sixers should hire. Or if you're watching this on the replay, you can comment in the comment section who you think's going to win. Sixers should hire. Yep, but yeah, going forward, we got a lot to do right here. Got some contracts to clear, some players to get rid of, and ultimately, yes, we have to rebuild. The only player I really think that can stay is Embiid and Maxey for his potential. Take that next step. Everyone else can pretty much move, be traded, and we can retool from there. So that's my closing thoughts for this 2022-2023 76ers recap. Another season where they lived up to expectations, being eliminated in the second round, but did so in an absolutely embarrassing way. And hopefully this will give them the smack across the face they need to realize they got to retool and start now. That's all I got to say for now. So yeah, to everyone that came in, thanks for coming in. I hope you enjoyed this stream. If you haven't done so already, drop a like. Subscribe if you're new to the channel so you don't miss out. You're going to get a lot of YouTube shorts where I talk about 76ers Eagles content. And I'm going to start trying to do some more live streams now with some of my time. And yeah, most of all, have a wonderful night or day. Until next time, Nicky Stees signing off.